Welcome to this special broadcast from here behind the front lines in California, where we are battling for freedom over tyranny. We continue to fight the battle to reopen California, to stand up for the rights that so many of our founders and our military members have fought for. We're actually coming up on Memorial Day, where we celebrate and remember the lives of those that were lost, those that have sacrificed and paid the ultimate price to secure our liberty. I've got a friend of mine who became a fast friend over just a couple weeks ago, connected. And like many of you, when we meet people in this fight for liberty, immediately there's a soul connection there. And this guy's one of those guys that I've felt that with. Dr. Cordie Williams is a chiropractor and a holistic medicine doctor. I want to make sure we got it right there, Cordie. Is that a correct assessment of who you are?
Yeah. Well, I'm a holistic chiropractor. Okay. Yes, I'm a doctor, and I call myself a holistic neurological chiropractor because we focus on neurology, the brainstem, the spinal cord, and putting the body in the best state of function. So that would be like the 2-minute soundbite or 1 second soundbite on that. Absolutely.
And you're also a former Marine who served our country, and you see what's going on in this country as well.
Yeah. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2002, went in at 18 in 1998. So even though I got this nice baby skin here, I just had my 40th birthday in January. So,
wow, man. Yeah. I thought you were younger than me. All right.
Well, people think Doogie Howser. That's why I got to wear a tie, man. That's why I got to wear a tie.
So I want to start off, we're going to talk about a few things. By the way, guys, do me a favor and share this video, share it out to all your platforms. Actually, I'm going to do that as we speak. While I do this, I'm actually just going to tell you guys, we are live now on, we're not live right now, but we are on, America's Voice News is now on Roku, Hulu, Fire TV, on Pluto TV, and now on Dish Network channel 219. So you can find us everywhere. The reason that we exist, the reason that we are here is because fake news has done a terrible job at telling the truth, and it's up to us, it's up to we the people to do that now. So do me a favor, share this video. Hang on 1 second, let me get down there if you haven't done it yet, and invite people to join, because what we're going to talk about is important for today. It's important for our country. 1 second, almost there. All right, it's important for the future of our nation. So Cordie, we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, and I want to get into this before we get into the Reopen rally that's coming up this Saturday in Sacramento at 12 noon. You guys need to be there for Memorial Day weekend. Everyone across the country, we are across the state, excuse me. And if you're across the country and you can make it, we'll take you in Sacramento at the state capitol. But yesterday, Gavin Newsom and the state government started giving out tax dollars, our tax dollars, citizens' tax dollars to illegal aliens. At the same time, last Thursday, he announced the state budget that we're $54 billion in a deficit, and that they're going to start closing veterans' homes, and specifically Barstow Veterans Home. What is that? What do you make of that?
Well, first off, while he's doing all this, he's a great multitasker, evidently, because he was getting all this done while he's on vacation and quarantine in Montana. So I'm sure you heard about that one. So I thought that kind of spiced everything up a little bit, made it a little bit more sexy, pardon my French. What a shame, right? I think it's a shame when we're, as a society where we all contribute and we all take our hard-earned dollars and we contribute it towards the federal government to enrich the lives of everyone, every person that's a citizen, to then say, you know what, blanketly, I'm just going to let everybody get a free pass, get a free ride. They can come in any way they want. They can vote illegally. And what we're going to do in a time of crisis or pandemic like this is we're just going to help fund it and support it. And, you can't help but think, Ben, 6 to 8 months out of a presidential election, that there's a political motive here. I mean, it's just, as I've said many times, it just doesn't pass the sniff test, right?
Well,
it just does not.
When it comes to the pandemic response, the so-called pandemic, it was initially called a pandemic. Now we're watching this thing, and it's like, what's really going on here? There's no question about it. Gavin Newsom's response and the Democrats' response, and even communities like Fresno, where we have city council members that refuse to reopen, It's clearly political. But you're right. The fact that this guy, who is supposed to be the governor of the 5th or 6th largest, depending on the day, economy in the world, goes on vacation. I was waiting to get confirmation of that. I believe we did. And while all this is happening, sends his family out. They're having a good old time. Spends $1 billion to China for masks that are faulty, 5 times the cost of a normal regular N95 mask. Spends $100 million more on homelessness while the homeless problem continues to skyrocket and be an issue. Lets criminals out of prison, yet puts you and I behind bars if we have the audacity to go out and support the Constitution. As a fellow member, as a member who served, now I'm not saying fellow myself, I'm saying fellow to all the other service members that have fought, and many of them have died. How does that make you feel?
Well, first of all, I'll say you are a service member because you're serving freedom, which is everything that those guys that fought and died fought for. So you know, in my opinion, just like a military spouse is in service, you're completely in service, dude. And I don't know anybody from my side of the table. I didn't go to combat. I almost did. But I don't know anybody sitting on my side of the table that doesn't say, wow, Ben is a patriot. We love Ben, and he's got a heart of gold. But to answer your question, what I would say is I think it's sickening. It's appalling that, you know, literally we're taking an entire society, and it's very clear the end motive is to strengthen voter base so that control and power can be on one side of the aisle. And, you know, I started an organization called 1776 Forever Free. We're all about freedom and choice. So I'm not necessarily here to get political about Democrat, Republican, whatever. But I do want to I wish we could step back as human beings to say what's right and what's wrong. Not from a morality standpoint, although I'm a Christ follower, so I tend to operate in that world, but just from the realm of just like common sense. Like, this doesn't work. This isn't right, because everybody should feel taken back a little bit by the fact that because of this pandemic that's going on, that there are these kind of undercurrent agendas that are slipping in and trying to take over what's happening right now. Like, everybody should be in shock and awe over that. Like, everybody should be mystified. Everybody should be frustrated. And it doesn't, I can't believe the way Americans are just, like, how easy this was for everybody to put on their mask, everybody to follow in line like mommy, and everybody just give up their freedom.
Speaking of that, so you're a doctor, you see a lot of patients, you see the issues going on, and you're also standing up against this lockdown, this home arrest, and you're out on the forefront you're out on the forefront fighting this to reopen California. Why is it that, what is it that you see that we've been told, that you see in the medical community versus reality, that makes you such a fierce opponent of this lockdown, shelter, wear a mask at all times philosophy?
Well, when I get asked that, I always get emotional, to be honest with you. And the reason why I do is because I got into this because of my boys. You know, like you, I have young kids. I've got a 3.5-year-old and I've got a 16-month-old. And I want them to have the freedom and enjoy the freedom that you and I did. I want them to be able to go out to a fishing pond somewhere, throw a lure out, catch a trout, whatever, be able to come up and hug someone, be on a boat somewhere when they want to, be able to go to church when they want to, without restrictions. Because when you start mandating and you start creating an atmosphere that's almost like a surgical, room, right? And you're going into the grocery store and it feels like instead of going to the grocery store to buy a bag of potato chips, organic, of course, right? You're going into the grocery store and you're going into an operating room where they're about to perform a heart surgery. There's a problem with that. Like I have a problem with that. And if somebody wants to take the herd out of herd immunity by being in quarantine, they can do that. They should have the choice to do that. If they want to wear, pardon me for saying, a facial condom, they should be able to do that. But don't tell me that I have to do that. Don't tell me that I have to change my boys' lives forever. If you want to fall into a new normal, great. I'm not going to.
And to those that say, well, it's necessary. So we have all these so-called experts now. Many of them are just politicians that are put into office that we voted, unfortunately, a lot of them in California into office. And they're saying this is for your own safety. You need to wear these masks. And what's crazy is, okay, I get it if you're wearing an N95 or you're wearing one of the actual masks that actually do give some sort of protection when you're in a medical situation, when, doctors and nurses and all that. But I go into a store now and I refuse to wear them. Like I said, this is the one. Now, here, I'm just going to throw a little scenario. I can wear this mask into a bank today. Today, I can walk into a bank in California and I can wear my snowboarding mask. By the way, this is my snowboarding mask, not my bank robbing mask. I can wear this and it's okay. Or go into any store in California right now and it's okay. But if I walk in like this, I'm deemed unsafe. How have we gotten here? And answer that question. Are you any safer wearing that mask or any of these stupid, idiotic face coverings that people are wearing around now than not wearing it?
Yeah, and I'm going to answer that, and then I'm going to acknowledge some people because I don't want to forget to do that because I think that's important. The peer-reviewed research out there, a good friend of mine, Dr. Deed Harrison, that sends, literally, the guy's the foremost authority on curve corrective spinal care in the world. His family has about 271 peer-reviewed research articles in the Journal of American Medical Associations, which is, besides the New England Journal of Medicine, that's right here. So as they say in Boston, he's kind of a smart guy, right? He's kind of a smart guy. So that being said, I kind of listen to him because he knows about data, he knows about research. He sent me 2 articles early on, sent me a host of articles, like, for example, Dr. J.P. Iondes from Stanford University, probably the world's leading epidemiologist, said early on that using China and Italy for a model for this whole thing was going to prove out to be like a huge mistake, right? Well, that's what they did, and what happened in Italy and in China, as you guys probably know at this point, is they have the highest elderly populations. Over 80%, I think, of the population is elderly, and a vast majority of the population smokes. So we know automatically they're immunocompromised, right? So they're a perfect host for a virus. Well, then what they did on top of that is Italy in particular said, you know what, we're going to take all the people impacted and adversely affected by COVID. We're going to put them in one hospital with the same doctors, the same nurses. So what happened? The numbers blew up, everybody got COVID, and then everyone took that model and tried to superimpose or transpose that model and use that model for the basis on what the numbers or stats might be around the U.S. And that's where you got all these crazy figures out there, right? Now, in response to one of your first questions around masking, there was a meta-analysis research study done between ventilators and masks, and I'm going to give you the gist of it, because if I start talking, the R correlation, nobody's going to understand what the heck that means. But basically, in comparing the ventilators and masks, they said essentially they don't work. They're ineffective, all right? They also said between a bandana and an N95 that obviously the bandana is going to be completely ineffective, except the N95, to your point, is going to be good in a surgical emergency room situation where everybody is gowned and they have multiple layers on from a mask standpoint, because they're not just wearing the N95 in a surgical room, they're actually wearing 4 or 5 layers. And when they go around a COVID-affected person, they take that N95 off and they replace it. So there's always 3 layers underneath. So the whole idea that by somehow somebody wearing, a maxi pad on their face with a rubber band, right? It's crazy. And that's going to protect them from the virus while they're creating hypoxia, drinking their own CO2. It's a farce. It's a complete farce. Now, I'm not saying just to really, you know what the liberal media does, and already, apparently I have a bunch of police officers that are mad at me that I didn't know I did, right? But I'm going to acknowledge that at some point if you allow me to, or I'd like to. But it's funny that I'm not saying that people haven't died of COVID. I'm not saying COVID isn't a real thing. That's an undisputable fact. the reaction to COVID, the reaction that we're taking from an economic standpoint, like you can't, I was talking to an admiral the other day, you can't draw one path with a pandemic like this and say, we're just going to focus on the medical side. The economic side, who cares? We'll figure it out as we go along. You have to do a dual approach. And I don't think, and that's not a criticism of the president, because, I'm not going to state my opinion of the president, but I'm a former Marine. I drive a red truck, and I have a USMC sticker on the back of my truck. So you can figure out whether I align with the president or not, right? But point being is, I think there was a lot of pressure from multiple different sources to just react to the medical part of it, and nobody was really thinking ahead as much about the economic part of it. I think the president was. I don't think his advisors necessarily were. And he's getting a lot of pressure. And, I pray for that guy every night, irregardless of what party you are. I think you have to pray for the president, 100%.
And it's interesting, the president who has done more good for America during 3 years of nothing but attack. I mean, it's been an ongoing coup attempt from what we've gathered so far against him, against Michael Flynn, against all of these patriots in our country. And what's crazy is you've got a guy who was just a business owner, who was a general. And let me. I don't want to discount General Flynn's service. So it's not just Michael Flynn, General Flynn, excuse me. But you've got a president who mainstream and conventional wisdom would say, oh, he can't be president. He's had no political experience. Yet today I just saw that he announced an executive order going after more regulations to try to jumpstart the economy, really going and saying, when he could have put an umbrella approach and done what some states did and say, by executive order, we're going to shut everything down, we're going to force this. He didn't. He said, we're going to allow the 10th Amendment to work, we're going to allow states' rights to work, we're going to make these recommendations. And I agree with you. From what I've seen, his advisors had one focus, and that was medical. And, who knows? I have my mixed emotions about the advisors that he has around him. But in general, you've got a guy who understands how to get things working again. And, man, I thank God every day that he's in there. And I agree. I pray for him every single day that he's in there. But that's the difference between somebody like President Trump, who now is looking for ways, how do we get out of this thing? And now he's going to be attacked for deregulating, which is an awesome thing. We've needed to do that he's already been doing that too, at the tune of 22-1. Every increased regulation, they've decreased 22 regulations over his tenure as president. You compare that to somebody like Gavin Newsom in California, who has no business experience. Yes, he has some investments in some companies. People will say he has some ownership in some companies. He's never written a paycheck. He's never been on the ground running a business day to day. And yet he's telling us, and he's never been in the medical field, and neither have I. I've never been in the medical field. That's why I have you on here and others that have. They're telling us, this is how you have to operate. This is how you have to live. This is, quote unquote, the new normal. How do we get out of this, and how do we prevent this from happening again?
Well, I think there's a couple of things about that, and I'm going to answer part of what you said first, and then I'm going to answer your specific question, because we agree about so much. Because I do think, to your point a few minutes ago, that people meet for a reason, and you and I and I don't mean to get spiritual on the show, but I'm a Christian.
Bring it on, brother.
And I'm a Christian. I love everybody, and nowadays, if you're a Christian, it means you're racist, and you think everybody's going to hell, and you don't love on people. And what I always say is just read the book of Matthew, because it kind of outlines it very clearly, that we got to love ourselves as we love our neighbor. And that doesn't mean I'm perfect. That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. But within that, I just point back to the fact that, like, I always like to talk about my voting record, so people understand why I'm doing this and what my motives are, right? So my voting record, when I was 18, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. President Clinton was our president. If I could have voted for Clinton, I would have. Come around to year 2000, when it was the next presidential election, I voted for Bush. Come around to 2008, voted for Bush for 2 terms. I at that time, I thought Obama was a great guy. Voted for him for 2 terms. Okay? And I'm not going to tell you who I voted for now, Okay, you can figure that one out on your own. But to your point, I've never seen such a divisive culture where you can't agree to disagree on a viewpoint about politics or how the government's ran or whatever. I mean, I think back 20 years, 15 years, 25 years, to where you could have a civil conversation about a differing political view, and it wasn't you were a bad person or a piece of trash or, you know, like I hate you and I'm going to delete you as a friend or like whatever, right? You could just agree to disagree. And I just find it interesting that the man that is in the White House right now, and this is where I really think people need to step back away from the mainstream media, away from the fake news, and use critical thinking. How's it possible that in our culture, somebody could be adored for 30 to 35 years, 40 years, whatever it was, put on Oprah, people asked him about the president, he had board games made after him, he's got tons of pictures with the Clintons, Hillary and Bill, donated to their campaign, donated to the Democratic National Committee for years. He was adored. And the minute that what was needed for America changed and his political viewpoint changed, he was ostracized as a misogynist and xenophobic, racist, all that. And I'm saying step outside of the political narrative of how you voted or how somebody else voted. Look at that, and then look what they're doing with this pandemic and the immigrants and what they're doing with the voting and what they're doing with delaying opening up 6 months before an election. And regardless of whether you're Democratic or Republican, you should look at that and say, this agenda is disgusting, it's despicable, and it is an overreach on our freedom and democracy and liberty. And if it can happen to our party and the president that was chosen by the people, wherever you stand politically, it can just as easily happen to your guy too. And that's where I just really can't believe that people can't put on their thinking caps around that. And I don't think I answered your one question at the end, but I couldn't help myself.
The other one is,
sorry.
How do we get out of this? But I do want to give you an opportunity to acknowledge some folks. And I want to acknowledge too, that I agree with you. We support law enforcement. I mean, I see what's going on around the state and around the country, and law enforcement being used it's been weaponized, as a police state in some places to attack our constitutional rights. I know a lot of the officers don't want to be doing what they're being told to do, the orders that they're being given by their superiors. And I understand that they've got families, they've got mortgages, they've got everything. And they understand that if they go against that, they're going to lose all of that. At some point, there's got to be a reckoning. And that's the concern I have. How do we get out? So going back to my previous question, and then whatever you want to say about law enforcement, and how do we get out of this? And how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again? This doesn't set the precedence for our Constitution just no longer exists and it no longer matters.
I think people like you and I, and people like, that have helped me sponsor this event, this Saturday, and it's been a collective effort. It's been myself, and it's been the Freedom Angels, Tara, Heidi, Denise, and Stephanie, right? Lee Dundas, Chris Lippy, my business partner, Dr. Lyle DeMoss, Dr. Billy DeMoss, and a host of other people, Dan Summers of We Have Rights, this guy named Pastor Paul that reached out to me. I mean, people are coming together. I mean, Ben, people are flying in from around the United States. We've realized, and I'm not going to say something. I got a weird text this morning. Whoever's watching this, they sent me, "Hi, this is Matt." And this person's digging for information. It was the funniest thing. I'm like, okay, how many people are coming? I'm like, well, you figure it out, buddy. However many God wants to send, right? But there's tons of people coming. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be an American thing. But I just had to acknowledge all those groups because it's not one person that really needs acknowledgement. It's the entire country that's making this event happen. And I think that mobilizing events like this that are of a larger or big scale, I think that's part of it. I think civil disobedience is part of it. And understanding, even when we get our basic rights back, meaning when businesses fully open up, you got to continue to push back on the masking thermometer. I'm not doing that. You're not checking my temperature. You're not masking me. You're not checking my kid's temperature. I'm just not doing it. I'm going into a friend's office. I'm willing to do that because he's a friend. But anybody else, you're not doing it to me. And I'm going to talk about my ADA undisclosed disability, and it's a $75,000 fine to ask me that. And by the way, we have letters laying around somewhere that are signed by this guy named Dr. Cordie Williams that talks about your undisclosed disability if you need one of those. And I'm just not doing that. It's BS. It's crap. The pushback, guys. I've got friends that are worried about their bottom line. They're worried about the money. They're worried about the practice. If you don't have your freedom, you can wipe your butt with all that stuff. It doesn't matter. And so that's why I'm really being a stand. I haven't seen my boys in probably 2.5 weeks for more than 45 minutes. And I know you're around the clock, and the people associated with you are the same way. But we got to continue to press. We got to do the rallies. We got to do the legislative stuff. We got to mobilize people. And Americans have to be ready. Now I'm going to let you breathe, right? Now I'm going to let you have air again and breathe. No King George. We're not going to take it. We're going to keep fighting. We don't want the new normal. We want what we've always had. There's no breadcrumbs for liberty. It's all or nothing. Sorry, there's my rant.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And I think you're right. For too long, we've sat back, and it was always this idea of compromise. You compromise with evil, you're always going to get a little more evil. And there's got to be a place where we come back and we say, nope, this is a hard line. This is where we aren't crossing. In fact, we're going to take ground back because we've lost so much as a nation. And that's what I'm looking for, leaders that are willing to go out there and fight and take ground back. I have people ask me all the time, am I ever going to run for office? And I'll tell you, God, that is not God's plan in my life, at least right now. I have no desire to go up there, but we sure as heck need people up there that are willing to go and fight and not just play patty cake, not go up there, whether it's Sacramento or in your own community or in DC. We have to have people that go and fight and take that ground back and make people uncomfortable. I mean, think about this. In my own city, in Fresno, California, we have, and technically I'm a little bit outside that, but that's the big metropolitan area, Fresno County, that impacts my life and the people around me's life. We have representatives, so-called representatives, who have decided for themselves that it is their job to shut down the economy. While they're doing that, they will send in police to issue citations and fines and arrest people. That is not America. That's not America. Yeah. And if we allow this to set as a precedence for the future, America's gone. And that's why I believe so strongly in what you're doing, what the Freedom Angels are doing, and why we need to be there this Saturday. So let's talk about that. And I know you got some time or some things to do, and I got some things to do, but let's talk about this Saturday. What's going on? What can people expect? Where can they get more information? And what's your call to action?
Yeah, well, thank you. I guess what I wanted to say real quick, I'll try not to go too long about this, but my video went viral, and it's out there, #Megaphone Marine, Megaphone Bet. We've kind of gotten some feedback a little bit from different law enforcement groups that some officers were offended by that. And, I just wanted to say that was never my intent. I'd seen a lot of friends get thrown to the ground, Tara and Heidi and Denise. And, in my opinion, I was standing right next to him. He's publicly said that it happened differently for him and his experience, Pastor Tim. But I really saw Pastor Tim kind of manhandled by 5 guys. Okay. And I was standing right there, and that was kind of my experience. So when I got up on that megaphone, I was so frustrated with where America was, and the fact that no officer stood up in retaliation to the governor. And I know they're in a difficult spot. It's got to be a difficult spot. They're getting orders. It's hard to discern between a lawful order and a true order, but I meant what I said at the time. It was not designed to offend anyone. What it was designed to do, and what I want these officers and their leaders to really look at, is the oath that we took to allow some of those things to happen and occur that occurred that day. Is that really constitutionally congruent? And that was my point that day. Okay? And Jesus got him off of that post and got him to move, right? I just happened to be the one going through the megaphone at the time, but I believe God moved him off. And I don't think that was an intimidation thing. I think they innately knew that was the right thing to do to transition. And, some people said they were changing lines and whatever. I got credit for it. I don't know. But what I know is what's been positive and good out of this movement and that video is the fact that people have come together. We created 1776 Forever Free, my best friend Chris Lippy and I. And what we're doing, what we decided to do early on, I think talking to Lee Dundas as well, is, what if we could bring all these 8 groups together? The Freedom Angels and Live Free and, Dr. Billy DeMoss and, Dan Summers Group. If we could bring them all together and do a massive rally, what would that look like? And that's what we've done. And so this Saturday, May 23rd, right across from 10th Street, right in front of the Capitol, we're doing a big, basically Memorial Day celebration rally. And we're going to have country music legend Kofi Anderson playing the guitar. We're going to have Buzz Patterson from District 7, U.S. congressional seat. Amazing guy, former lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He's running for U.S. Congress, written 3 books, carried the nuclear football for Clinton, and a host of others, okay? Jamel Hawley from New Jersey as well. He's a state legislator, okay? And there's all these different speakers that are coming in that are going to speak and share their heart and talk about freedom. And the reason why you need to be there is your time and your money is what's going to move the needle on this, okay? That's what's going to move the needle on this. If you sit at home and you continue to press the remote and you quarantine in fear and you put on the facial condom, if you just sit at home and you do nothing, that bus for freedom is going to go right away from freedom and it's going to go towards socialism. And what we need right now, my call to action, Ben, to your point, is for everybody to buy a ticket to that bus. Show up on May 23rd. Okay, you're almost missing your daughter's birthday. You're going to make it because you're going to be there by Sunday. It's $120 through Southwest to get a plane ticket. It's $20 to $40 through the Freedom Angels Foundational website to get a bus ticket. You can get up there. The question is, how bad do you want it? Because you matter, your voice matters, your body matters. And buy a $29 T-shirt from www.1776foreverfree.com. That's going to go to support what everybody's doing, the Angels, myself. We're all contributing to this thing. So that's what I would say, brother. And I think I went longer than I said I was, but I really appreciate the time, and thanks for having me on today.
No, bro, I absolutely appreciate it. And this is it. This is what we have to do, guys. If you're out there, you're watching, you're wondering what to do, the first step, people always ask me that, is how'd you get involved? How'd you start doing this? And I'll tell everybody, I said yes to the first thing. And that first thing was a small thing. My thing actually was in college. I just got frustrated with the way things are going. But when I got called back to this after falling away for a few years, my first thing was go out and shoot a little video about how stupid the plastic bag bans were in California. And then that turned into me going to Berkeley and getting beat over the head with sticks. Everybody's journey is different, but the first thing you have to do is the first thing. If you haven't done anything, you got to do something. And the 23rd could be a great opportunity for you. Get outside of your comfort zone, because anything that means anything that matters in your life is going to be a little bit uncomfortable for you. I invite you all to come join us, to stand up, and wherever you're at, whether you're in California, whether in the Central Valley near me, anywhere else across the state or across the country, it's time for you to stand up, to mobilize, to organize, to get people that are willing to stand up and fight back for liberty and freedom, or else you don't deserve it. And that's the reality. This is Ben Bergquam for America's Voice News with my friend, Dr. Cordie Williams, inviting you to stand up for America. God bless you guys. God bless President Trump, and God bless America.